How are we doing today, guys? Welcome back to the CMD project. Today I want to kind of switch it up a bit. I want to do something a little bit different. I want to do a ranking video on insurance companies in the state of Florida. Now, I'm a public adjuster and I have been doing this for quite some years now. I have personally fought against every one of these insurance companies. I have seen their dirty tactics. I have seen their methods to lowball insureds whenever they need them at their lowest point. And I want to go ahead and run through these and rank these. And I'm going to base these on a scale of unicorn, meaning great insurance company, pays out fairly, makes the claims process as smooth as possible, all the way to a homeowner's worst nightmare. When you have a fire that burns your house down and your insurance company is telling you, we don't owe you for that. Now, if you're a homeowner within the state of Florida, this may be a good video for you. And to start off today, we are going to go with USAA. Now, about 5-6 years ago or so, when I was new in this industry, these guys were not bad. They would pay the claims out, and it was minimal fighting. But I will say, over the last probably 2 or 3 years, they have kind of gone a little bit downhill. And I'm going to put them in workable. You know, they're going to lowball. They're kind of falling more in line with the other carriers, the big carriers, you know, where they want to deny, underpay. But I will say that even when I work a USAA claim to these days, it's still workable. You know, if you submit the proper documentation and you back up your claim, oftentimes we find that they do pay and they do pay fairly. And that's the thing that kind of separates a good insurance company from a bad insurance company. The things that separate a good insurance company from an insurance company that would be categorized as a homeowner's worst nightmare are the avenues that are built into that policy language that you have to take after you've been denied or underpaid, if you've been denied or underpaid. You know, do you have mediation? Do you have appraisal? Do you have litigation as an option? Is there a preferred vendors clause in that policy? Is there a $5,000 to $10,000 water cap? You know, these are things, and we'll discuss this. But I'm going to put USAA in workable. You know, they're going to put up a little bit of a fight, but if you have the right documentation and your claim is presented properly, 9 times out of 10 you're going to be paid fairly. And then we're going to go on to American Integrity. Now, I will say, when I first started in this, American Integrity was the bottom of the barrel. Absolute worst carrier that I had ever worked. But I will say probably within the last year or so, and I don't know if it's just the experience I have at this point or if they're making changes internally, but I'm not gonna put them into a homeowner's worst nightmare, even though I absolutely cannot stand American Integrity. I'm gonna have to put them in will make you fight, because we have had good success. They are going to look for any excuse to deny. They are going to underpay you. But what we've seen in the last year is that we have had good success with them. We've been able to provide documentation. We've been able to negotiate with them, you know, whether it's through mediation, a lot of times litigation, but these are claims that we're able to get paid for at the end of the day. Now, going on to Progressive, this is one of the bigger carriers out of the big 3 that we see here in the States. And I will say I haven't dealt with Progressive all too often, and I have heard mixed things about them. And again, this is all based on my personal experience of what I have seen. I'm going to put Progressive into workable. You know, they're going to put up a fight. They're going to make you jump through a few hoops. But at the end of the day, I do believe that Progressive is a workable carrier. You know, I think maybe I've worked 5 to 6 claims that had Progressive, and all 5 to 6 we were able to get paid out. Moving on to Citizens, and this is the state-ran carrier. Now, when I first started doing this, Citizens was probably in the pays decent category. And this is the thing with the carriers, they will often fluctuate. You may have a carrier that is good this year, and next year they're bottom of the barrel. So these things do fluctuate, they change guidelines internally all the time. Now, that being said, Citizens going from pays decent, and what I mean by that is they had a lot of things in their policy that gave you the option to fight. You had mediation, which oftentimes honestly was kind of a waste of time if your dispute was more than $10,000. They had appraisal, which was really great. And they still have appraisal, but what they've been doing recently is they have been sneaking in Department of Administrative Hearings, meaning the citizens of Florida, they essentially take your right to litigate away. And you have to have coverage opened to be able to appraise. So now, if they flat out deny your roof, you can't take it to appraisal and you no longer have litigation. And what we've seen from citizens in about the last year and a half, they have been just handing out denials. I have a claim here in Seminole, not far from where I'm at, St. Pete, Tampa area, where a homeowner had a tornado come through for one of the storms last year. I think it was Hurricane Debbie, and a tornado actually hit their home. They had a flat roof portion of the back of their home, modified bitumen, completely peeled it back like you're peeling an orange. And citizens sent a denial letter calling that wear and tear. I'm going to have to lower them in. They're not bottom of the barrel. We're still getting payments from them as long as there's not a DOA endorsement. But I'm going to have to say we'll make you fight. And, we've been seeing DOA in a lot more policies recently. If it becomes something universally, they are going to go into a homeowner's worst nightmare. But right now, I'm going to have to say, they'll make you fight. They'll make you jump through 500 hoops. But at the end of the day, we will get payment from them. FedNat Insurance Company. I haven't done too many of these. I've done a handful. But in my experience with FedNat is they're actually a decent company. They pay decently. I had a few that were denials. We simply called for a reinspection, met with a more experienced adjuster on their side of things. We're able to point things out and got payments pretty fairly. We're able to supplement with documentation, photos, or whatever it may be, contractor invoices. And we were able to settle those fairly quickly within, 3 to 4 months or so. I don't think I ever had a FedNat go to litigation. So I would say they're a pays decent company. They're not going to make you fight too hard, in my experience. Now, could be completely different for somebody else. Then we're going to go on to Chubb. Chubb here. You're often going to see Chubb on, I kind of want to say, $1 million plus homes. You'll see them on a lot of commercial properties. But Chubb, honestly, is a unicorn in the insurance industry. In my experience, and from what I hear from colleagues, whenever you get a Chubb claim, it's like that golden ticket. They're going to pay out. They're going to pay fairly. It's something where you're able to work that without a lot of back and forth. As long as you submit the proper documentation, as long as you have a valid claim, things should go through pretty fairly. And then we are going to hop on to Slide Insurance Company. Now, Slide Insurance is the one who has been buying up a lot of the Citizens policies. Citizens is going through depopulation, meaning they're the state-ran carrier, so they want to get rid of policies that they're carrying. And Slide has been one of the major players that has come in and bought up a lot of these policies. And, honestly, in my experience with Slide, I've had some claims where they made me jump through 500 hoops. I've had other claims where they were pretty decent. I had a mediation with Slide on a few claims where, and this is kind of unheard of. I mean, we were settling for $60,000 to $80,000 in mediation at times with Slide. So I'm going to have to put Slide in that workable category. And again, each claim is different, but I'm kind of basing this on the average of the claims I've worked with Slide. I've worked a fairly decent amount of Slide claims, and I will say Slide definitely is one of those workable carriers. They're not the greatest, they're not the worst. If you're insured by Slide, you can kind of rest a little bit easy, but still, if you have a claim, make sure you do your due diligence, make sure you're documenting everything, and make sure I always recommend having representation, whether that's from a public adjuster, a contractor, or an attorney. But I will say Slide is definitely a workable carrier. Going on to Big Red, the one and only, the one who spends billions, or I don't know if it's billions, but maybe millions of dollars a year on advertising. You're going to see them when you're watching the Super Bowl. There's going to be Patrick Mahomes, Aaron Rodgers in their commercial. They're spending all this money, luring people in. But at the end of the day, they are going to fall into a homeowner's worst nightmare. This is, and again, this is my opinion, the biggest piece of shit insurance company on the market. I honestly rarely will even sign a State Farm claim unless it's cut and dry. If there's even a hint that it's going to be a fight, I'm just going to tell the client, the potential client, look, I'm going to put you in contact with an attorney. Just go to the attorney. It's going to end in litigation if you file a claim. If you have State Farm, I don't know if it's them. You're in good hands, or like a good neighbor, State Farm is there. Complete bullshit. They are the bottom of the barrel, bottom of the barrel, bottom of the barrel. And then we hop on to Homeowner's Choice, a carrier that we deal with pretty frequently here in Florida. Now, I will say with Homeowner's Choice, and again, the things that make an insurance policy good versus bad are the avenues you have to take when they underpay, deny. I mean, honestly, I wish I had a category between will make you fight and a homeowner's worst nightmare for Homeowner's Choice. You know, we've had success. I will tell you, though, honestly, we've had to do a lot of the pre-litigation prep, and I would say about 50% of them will go to litigation. But then again, 50% of them we will be able to settle on our own without having to go to litigation. But over the last year, it's kind of been teetering more towards a homeowner's worst nightmare. But again, State Farm is still bottom of the barrel, bottom of the barrel, bottom of the barrel. And now we move on to Olympus. This is a carrier I have not dealt with very often. I think maybe, Florida's a big state. So I'm in the Tampa, St. Pete area. I think they may write a lot more policies on the East Coast, Miami area. But I have ran into them. And in my experience, they have been one of the carriers that it's kind of between workable and will make you fight. But at the end of the day, it's an insurance company, so I'm not going to give them the benefit of the doubt, and I will put this under will make you fight. Again, I don't have a ton of experience with Olympus. I have a crap ton of experience with Citizens, American Integrity, State Farm, USAA, Slide, Progressive's one that not a lot, but a good handful. But in my experience, and this is just my opinion, yet again, for the 500th time, they're going to make you fight. And then we move on to Heritage Insurance Company. And I will say Heritage gets a lot of hate. So the thing with Heritage is they have in their policies what is called a right to repair or a preferred vendors clause. Meaning if you have a loss, they have a right to invoke the option to send out their mitigation company, for example, if it's water loss. If it's a roof loss, they have the option to send out their roofer. Honestly, I hear a lot of hate on them, but in my experience, I have found Heritage to be pretty workable, So, for example, State Farm, they would hire a chimpanzee to be a desk adjuster. My experience with Heritage, desk adjusters they're decent. They're going to hear, they're willing to negotiate. And a lot of times we're able to beat that right to repair clause or just have them not. I mean, obviously they're going to invoke it, but we have them rescind that essentially to where the homeowner is able to choose their own contractor to do their work as long as we give a fair price. Now, as a PA, if I submit an estimate that's $300,000 and inflate the shit out of it for no reason, it's going to go to litigation. And again, if you're a PA, do not do that. Write for what is fair and just be ethical at the end of the day. Now, we hop on to Ken Insurance, and Ken is one of these guys that not absolute bottom of the barrel, but they definitely are going to make you fight. I did a lot of Ken claims for Hurricane Ian back in 2022. I haven't seen them recently in the last few years. I think I've ran across a few, but back during Hurricane Ian, I think maybe I probably worked 50 to 60 Ken claims. And they absolutely made us fight. I would say probably 20% of those went to litigation where we had to turn it over to an attorney. But at the end of the day, we were able to settle a rough estimate about 80% of those on our own. Now, this is through mediation, re-inspections, appraisal, 500 emails back and forth, 400 phone calls back and forth. But we were able to get the job done. And now we are looking at the famous Lloyd's of London. Now, little fun fact for you guys. Lloyd's was one of the very first, actually, I think it might be the first modern insurance company from the 1800s or maybe earlier. They had the London fires back in the day, and that is kind of what originated Lloyd's of London as a fire insurance company. They've evolved, they've grown, and I will honestly say that they are going to go into unicorn. You're not going to see Lloyd's on your regular residential property. Oftentimes, I run into them on commercial properties. Now, if you're a business owner, a commercial property owner, and you have the option between Chubb, this is where you're going to see these guys most often is, commercial. I think Chubb does write residential, but it's $1 million plus, big fancy homes. But if you see the option between Chubb or Lloyd's, absolutely go with that. If it's a little bit extra money, just spend the extra money and have that peace of mind that you're going to be taken care of in the event of a loss or a catastrophe. Moving on to Tower Hill. These guys used to be workable. They were workable. These are another one that is like Heritage. They have that right to repair in their policy, but in my experience, I've found them to be a little more strict with it, as in they're going to enforce it. But I'm going to go ahead and put them in will make you fight, but they're still workable in a sense. We've had good success with them, but it is a fight. It is absolutely a fight. Whenever I sign a client, I let them know completely honestly, look, give me 3 to 6 months to get this done for you. And then we have the infamous Universal Property. Guys, about 2 years ago, everybody was hating on Universal. I had them up here. I don't know what it was, but I was hitting home runs with Universal. I actually created a relationship with a few of the internal guys in the mediation department, and I was able to settle these pretty quickly. We had a giant hailstorm in Land O'Lakes maybe 2 years ago, and I think I signed up about 40 of these just in one neighborhood, and I got 90% of them closed within 2 to 3 months. For a fair price, everybody was happy. My fee was paid. The homeowners had enough money. It was a win-win for everybody. But I will say, since that time, Universal is kind of teetering between a homeowner's worst nightmare and will make you fight. But I will say I'm going to have to put them in will make you fight. In my experience now, Universal is going to make an undisputed payment. They are not a State Farm where they're just going to deny. If there's legitimate damage, they'll open coverage, but they're going to severely underpay it, and then they're going to make you fight for every single penny. We don't even waste time with mediation with Universal Property anymore. We don't even waste time. And again, I think in their policy language it says appraisal must be. You may request appraisal. And again, this is where the policy language is different. One word can change the meaning of something. There's a very big difference between you may request appraisal or you may demand appraisal. And both parties have to agree. So appraisal's kind of been off the table with Universal lately, and we have had to honestly send a lot to litigation, although we still demand appraisal, and sometimes it slips through. It'll slip right through the cracks, and we're in appraisal. Fantastic. They've accepted. We don't, and this is just one of the tricks as a PA, and maybe some newer PAs out there can use this. If it says you must request appraisal and both parties may agree, I'm going to pretend I did not read that, and I'm going to send an appraisal demand in. We are demanding appraisal. It's up to them to correct me. And there have been times where it has slipped through. Maybe it was a dumb desk adjuster who said, they demanded appraisal. I'm going to name an appraiser. Great, cool. Now we're in appraisal. You've named your appraiser. You've accepted. Fantastic. They play dirty. We have to play dirty too sometimes. So now moving on, Castle Key. Honestly, I am going to put Castle Key into, in my experience, they're going to make you fight. Now, it's been a while since I've worked the Castle Key claim, but I will say I do believe that they are one of the Heritage Tower Hills, as in they have the right to repair, the option for their preferred vendors, and they do enforce it. But other than that, really, I don't have much to say about Castle Key. It hasn't been the worst experience with them, but it hasn't been the best. They're going to make us fight. Moving on, we have Security First Insurance Company. And we're going to go ahead and follow this trend here. And they are going to go into will make you fight. And if I had to rank these guys, I mean, honestly, maybe this, because I don't have a ton of experience with Olympus. American Integrity is definitely one. Yeah, Ken, Universal. Well, recently, maybe this. That's about right. If we wanted to put the will make you fight in order, American Integrity, Citizens, Universal Property, Ken, Tower Hill, Castle Key, Security First, and Olympus. But anyway, we were on Security First here. Kind of like mayonnaise, Not great, not the worst thing ever. And then we move on to People's Trust. And People's Trust, oh man, this takes me back to, I don't know, 2021, 2022. We were working a lot of People's Trust. And they came out with, I don't know what was in their policy language that was different from Castle Keys, Tower Hill, or Heritage. I never really compared it. But as where we were able, attorneys were able to overcome Heritage, Tower Hill, and Castle Key, there were a ton of PAs who were not even touching People's Trust back at the time. Back at the time, I was fairly new. I was taking anything I can get my hands on. If I had a claim, I'm going to at least try to work it. Now, People's Trust, their policy language of their right to repair or their option was so tight-knit that attorneys would not even take People's Trust. They may still not take People's Trust. I don't know. It's been a minute since I've seen them around. I've been seeing a lot of... It's almost like everybody has Citizens these days in this area. But I didn't have the worst experience with People's Trust. Honestly, as where a lot of people hated them, I kind of had them into workable. They wanted to use their preferred vendor. Obviously, they're an insurance company. They want to save money. And I get it. We're PAs. We want to make money on the claim. But this is the thing. If you're fair, if you're just fucking fair and you just call the claim what it is and you do not try to inflate it, a lot of these carriers you guys are bitching about and crying about, you're going to find they're workable. You're not going to make $10,000, $15,000 on every claim. There are going to be claims where you only make $2,000, $3,000. People's Trust were kind of one of those. In my experience, if you submitted estimates from contractors that were reasonable, and let's define reasonable. What is reasonable? Your definition of reasonable may be completely different from my definition of reasonable. But I think at the core of everything, we know what the fuck is reasonable, when you're talking about a remodel for a kitchen. I know there's a lot of variables. I understand that. There's a big difference between laminate countertops and granite quartz countertops, or, 60 square feet of granite quartz countertops versus a kitchen with 24 square feet of laminate countertops. There's a lot of variables. I understand that. But let's say your average kitchen, let's just basic mayonnaise average kitchen. If you're submitting $100,000 for that basic kitchen, I'm sorry, you're inflating it. As a PA, that's unheard of for me to say that. Where I'm submitting an estimate for 45, it's actually, and I know not everybody's going to agree with me. I'm going to get, what the fuck do you know, yada, yada, yada. Eat a dick, man. Let's not try to rip the homeowners off. And that's the problem with this industry, man, is it's greed. It's absolute greed on all parts. You have the insurance companies being greedy as hell. You have certain contractors being absolutely greedy as hell. You have certain public adjusters being absolutely greedy as hell, inflating the shit out of their estimates. It's a shit. It's I don't know. I'm look at me. I'm fucking fumbling over my words here. But anyway, I digress. Let's move on to Edison. Honestly, I haven't worked as many Edison as I have Citizens, but in my experience of the ones I have worked, this is my experience, they have been a workable carrier. They'll make the undisputed payment. If it's legitimate damage, you're going to have to submit follow-up documentation, though. If it's a damaged roof, you're going to have to submit that roofing invoice or a signed contract for a roofer stating that you intend to use that roofer for said price, whatever it may be. Photos. Think about it, guys. A lot of these claims we work are in a storm environment. Hurricane hits, tornado hits, hailstorm hits. The insurance carriers adjusters are coming out and they're doing, and I know this because I used to be an insurance company adjuster. I actually used to work for this one right here. I was working 5 to 7 claims a day. As that insurance company adjuster, do you think I was spending 2 hours at every single person's home? No, I was trying to get in and out of there as quickly as possible. Write my stuff up, make my money. That's just the way it was. We were overwhelmed. We were overworked. I forget what storm it was. It was New Orleans. It was, I think, 2020 or something like that. 2021. I don't remember the year exactly, but we were working in New Orleans and we were staying in, I think it was Gulfport, Mississippi, about 100 miles away. All our claims were in New Orleans. So every day we had to wake up at 5 a.m. And a lot of insurance company adjusters go through this. They deal with the same thing. We had to wake up at 5 a.m., drive to New Orleans. We got to New Orleans by about 6:30 after fueling up, getting breakfast, whatever. Then we would hit morning traffic. By the time we got to our first stop, it was 7:15 in the morning. We were spending about 45 minutes to an hour. Boom. Now we're looking at 8:15. Drive 30 minutes to our next loss that we have, next claim. Okay, spend about an hour, 45 minutes there. Then let's say there's an hour drive between the next one, and you're doing 6 or 7 of those a day. And that in between those 6 or 7, there may be one where you have to spend hour and a half, close to 2 hours. It's big loss. By the time you're done, it's 5, 6 p.m., and then you have to drive that 100 miles back in traffic. By the time you get back to the hotel, it's 7, 8 sometimes. Now you have to write estimates till, I don't know, midnight, 1 in the morning on Xactimate, and you're getting 4 or 5 hours of sleep. You're doing this every day. And this is the reality that these insurance company adjusters are living, these independent adjusters. They're going to miss things. And the thing also is a lot of these guys are brand new. When a storm hits, the insurance company hires anybody with a heartbeat. That's how I got hired. I had a fucking heartbeat. I had 0 experience in insurance. I had roofing experience, selling roofs, delivering roofing material prior to that, but I had no claims experience. And I'm out there with a 3-day class under my belt when I first started working for Allstate, telling these people what their loss is worth. It's asinine. It's absolutely crazy. And so that's just the way it is, though, So you can't really blame the independent adjusters too much. I mean, they're in these certain scenarios completely overworked. But moving on, Florida Peninsula here. This is a tough one. I'm gonna give them. Maybe homeowners' worst nightmare. They're pretty bad. They're not the greatest. There's no appraisal clause. You have mediation. You have litigation, but who wants to go to litigation for 2 years if you don't have to? You know what I mean? When you suffer a loss, you want to get paid out what you're owed. And then finally, we have Allstate here, the good hands. And in my experience, I know there's a ton of hate. A lot of people compare Allstate to State Farm. In my experience, though, Allstate has been pretty workable. And I know some people aren't going to agree. But in my experience, again, that's my experience, Allstate has been workable. They've been, not the greatest, not the worst. But and there's more carriers out there within the state of Florida, but these are the ones that I've worked the most of. These are the ones that I see on a daily basis. And this is my definitive ranking of insurance carriers within Florida. If you guys would like to see more content, more rankings, more maybe reaction videos, go ahead, drop a like, leave a comment, let me know. All right. I'm still trying to figure out this content creating thing. I don't know what the fuck I'm doing, guys. I have absolutely zero idea, but I hope I'm doing okay. So just let me know. All right. Until next time.